On this edition of Larry the Golf Guy, we speak with Gordon Dalgleish, who founded Perry Golf, which is one of the leading golf travel companies in the world over 40 years ago with his brother Colin. So we talked with Gordon about how he got started in the game in his native Scotland, and then get into Perry Golf and how golf travel and golf travelers have changed over the past 40 years, what sorts of hidden gems there are available for golf trips today, and what led him to pair golf travel with cruises. We also discuss his involvement with junior golf with both the AJGA and the First Tee program. So all of that and much more up next with Gordon Dalgleish on this edition of Larry the Golf Guy. Well, welcome to another edition of Larry the Golf Guy, and I'm so pleased today to welcome to the podcast Gordon Dalgleish, who is the founder, along with his brother, of course, Perry Golf, which is, one of the great golf travel companies, and we'll start talking about that, as well as a bunch of other things. Gordon, thank you so much for joining us today.
Larry, my pleasure to be with you.
So as I often like to do with our guests, for the benefit of our listeners, maybe talk about kind of where you were raised, which I know is in Scotland, and how and when you were first introduced to the game of golf.
Well, as you get older in life, you reflect on these pathways and how you made decisions that just ultimately affected your entire life. And at the time, you don't realize it. When we were three, we lived in Oak Patrick. My father was a lawyer in Glasgow. My brother was 2 years older. And when I was three, they built what's called the Erskine Bridge, ran across the Erskine River up from Glasgow. And our home was close to the bridge. My father decided it was time to move his young family out a little bit farther away from Glasgow, where his office was. We go down to Helensburgh. We had absolutely zero connection with the game of golf at that point. And by pure chance, they purchased a home that was directly across the street from the local golf club. And so for 4 years, there was no engagement with the game of golf. And then when I turned 7 and my brother turned 9, we asked our parents if we could learn how to play golf, because it was literally 50 yards from our home. And we took lessons every Sunday morning at 10:30 for 7 years. And
Wow.
that was how we involved in the game of golf. And it has been, the central part of my life and brother's life and our business since then.
Wow, that's cool. I mean, did you play at all competitively as a junior at all, or was it just fun, or?
No, we played competitively. I mean, so I think my first recollection of a junior tournament would have been the under 12s for Dumbartonshire. So I'd have been 10 or 11 at the time. And it was probably similar for my brother. Then we played in the Scottish Boys at North Berwick at that stage.
Wow.
And it was as a result of that, 1975, that my father met an American gentleman who had two sons playing in a junior tournament in Scotland. The Scottish Boys stroke play at Kilmarnock Brassey, got talking, and it was Mark McCormick, and Mr. McCormick had started IMG.
Wow,
So we became
sure.
friends with McCormick's, and that's just kind of led to our connection in the United States. So it was through junior golf and then, just golf in general that we've ended up here.
And so you came over was it college where you went William and Mary, and I know on a Mark McCormick scholarship. Was that your first time in the States, or?
No, no. We would come over in the summer. Mr. McCormick invited my brother to come over and play with his younger son, Todd, and they played up in Ottawa, as I recall, and then East Aurora in the summer of 76. And then in the summer of 77, I came over with Colin, and we played at East Aurora and at the Western Junior and the Northeast Amateur, actually, now I remind myself.
Oh,
So
wow.
we played 2 months. And then with the opportunity to come to college, my brother went to Ohio State for 2 years, decided it was too cold for him, even by Scottish standards. And Ohio can be quite tough. And I ended up at William and Mary on Mr. McCormick scholarship and played golf there from 80 to 83.
Great. So you were both college golfers. I know your brother became quite a notable player, right? I mean, a couple of Walker Cups. In fact, if I remember right, and I was thinking of this because we just finished, obviously, the Walker Cup at Cyprus. I think he was on the team the last time it was played at Cyprus, right? Back in 81?
You're exactly correct. 1981. Um, he played in the Walker Cup team. They had the U.S. Amateur the following week up at the Olympic Club,
Mm.
and he was, as I recall, third low medalist in that. That was at the time of the
Wow. Wow.
so but yeah, Colin was as I seem to recall, on the singles, he was one under par and he was beaten 7-6 by Jody Mudd. It
Wow.
was
Wow.
that magnitude. But anyway, so Colin was, far and away a more impressive amateur career than I ever thought of. He went on to become the captain of the GB&I Walker Cup teams in
Right.
2007 and 9 at Royal County Down and Marion, respectively. Whereas my only claim to fame was I won the 1995 Chinese Amateur.
I saw that. I mean, and we're going to talk about your company in a second, but I saw that. So you kept, how does, I love that that was on your CV. So how did so you just kept playing and how did you end up playing in that tournament?
Well, it was funny. I'd never been to Asia, and I always had an interest in going to Asia. It was 95, so I was 33, and just from a business standpoint. And I saw there was a golf show in Hong Kong,
Hmm.
and signed up for. In fact, an old friend from Los Angeles, Jim Tippett, who was a great traveling friend. As I called him up and said, "Hey, do you fancy a trip to Hong Kong?" And sure enough, so we went over to the golf show. And then a short time before we left, for some reason, I got an entry blank in the mail for the Chinese Amateur, which was at Cheongshan Hot Springs in just about an hour and a half from Hong Kong. And it was a 4 round stroke play tournament at the Nicholas course. The original course in China was the Palmer course at Cheongshan, and then the Nicholas course was built, and it was a 4 round event over that. And I managed to sneak it in. What was in my favor was the fact that the World Cup was at Mission Hills that year, that Couples and Love played together. It reorganized. They had to reorganize the Hong Kong Open, and that affected all the good amateurs ended up playing in the Hong Kong Open the week that the Chinese Amateur was on. And so as a result, this Scottish guy managed to sneak in and get a trophy. As I joke, I was the tallest player in the field.
Oh, I
It
love
was
it.
fabulous memory, albeit it was 30 years ago.
Oh, that's a great memory. So let's go back to sort of your graduating from college, and you mentioned your brother, was at Ohio State, you're at William and Mary. And you guys, I think, founded this company pretty shortly thereafter, I think in 1984. I mean, Perry Golf, of course. I mean, I'm maybe to start the ball rolling on that. I mean, how'd you come up with this idea? Did you kind of know that you wanted something in golf? I think this is so interesting because you guys were pretty young when you started it.
Yeah, I was 22 and Colin was 23 at the time in August of '84. I had been helping out with the American Junior Golf Association in the summer months when I was in the US, as they were just getting started with some tournaments. And so I thought I had a bit of a network in the golf world. As it turns out, didn't really have that much impact on our business. And Colin was in Scotland. We knew some people that were in the golf travel business, and at that stage, very much so. It was very, very embryonic, I suppose, in many respects.
Hmm.
Uh, of travel to Scotland, and we thought we could do a better job. And it was there was no great study for it. It was just a 22-year-old here and a 23-year-old there, and we started off. And I still remember our first clients were from Louisville, Kentucky, Sam Miller, Kent McElwain, and Hunt Collins in May of 1985. And the original business plan actually was to run, I think 5 or 6 pro-am tournaments a year in Scotland from different parts of the United States. The reality is we never did. We ended up starting off basically running custom trips for kind of groups of 4 and 8. And we were, it was just kind of one of these things that you grind it out the first few years. It was an entirely different time then. There was no internet as we realized.
Hmm.
We got an article, as I recall, in the Washington Post in the travel section, which helped us. And you get a piece in in Golf Digest or Golf Magazine. And, it was two young guys that had a dream, and we just kind of made it work.
That's so awesome. I've 22 and 23, and obviously it's been a great success. How, I mean, so it's more than 40 years now. I mean, how have you seen the golf travel industry and your business change over those 40 years? I'm sure it's been a lot, but what are kind of the most notable things that pop into your head when you think back over how it's changed?
Well, I think that talking very specifically about golf clubs in the British Isles,
Yeah,
I think they've realised that the opportunity with visitor income can help them upgrade their. And I'm very proud of so many of them because they've taken a lot of the money that they've from visitor green fees and upgraded the facilities and the experience, both from the quality of the golf course and the conditioning, and to the quality of the experience in the clubhouse, etc. And so the start to finish experience. Back in the mid '80s, it would have been a much more basic type of situation. The hotel quality, I think, has changed significantly. The single biggest thing that's changed is that when we started, you had a choice of phoning the UK at $1 a minute or using telex. I mean, fax hadn't come in. So in
right.
terms of for somebody to plan and execute the trip, I mean, it was a pretty time consuming exercise and a relatively expensive one. It's not as if you can, nowadays where you can pick up your phone and have instantaneous communication, see T sheet availability, and it basically costs you nothing. So yeah, I mean, it's the whole experience. Now that all being said, I mean the prices certainly haven't come down over the years as the demand has increased. I mean, and golf courses, you could also make a solid argument that the wealth has been spread to some extent. A golf course, let's just say like North Berwick or Dornoch or Gillen, would see relatively few visitors back in the mid '80s, and now golf courses that are maybe not in the first tier, and by that I mean the open rotation courses. They'll have a pretty healthy, if not completely full, tee sheet. So all that stuff. Plus you've got more inventory. You've got the Kingsbarns and the Dumbarnies and the Doonbegs and the Old Heads. There's a fair amount of new inventory that's come along as well. It doesn't come along in, it's not massive numbers of new golf courses, but it's, if you add up over 40 years, it's certainly a good number.
For sure. One of the things, and I've had the pleasure of having one trip to Scotland and one trip to Ireland, and I know you'll know this, but just for the benefit of some of our listeners who may not have been there, unlike the United States, even the very, very best private clubs, you mentioned Royal County Down earlier, which is my personal favorite, or even a Muirfield, which is such a, elite prestigious club, will make available during the week times for the public. Is it, which is such a, I mean, it's awesome for us from the U.S. coming there. Obviously, Augusta National and Pine Valley are not opening their, or your Merion even not opening their doors, quite the same way. What sort of, is that always been the case? And what do you think accounts for that?
I think it's very much society in the UK golf. I mean, it's despite some kind of perceptions that there's a kind of a caste society in the British Isles. I don't believe that's the case. I mean, the simple reality is that the word private in the UK for a golf club and private in the United States mean two completely different things. It's private and it's semi-private by US parlance. And I genuinely think it's a combination of pragmatism and also kind of societal pressures that everybody should have access at some stage. And if you look at a Muirfield or a Troon or a County Down, I genuinely, while there's clearly commercial benefit to the club and the membership and everything that goes with so many visitors, there is an element of pride to we're the custodians of a great golf course and we want to share it with people.
Yeah.
And yeah, there's a commercial aspect to that, and that's all fine because it truly is a win-win-win. And you'd asked me about biggest changes. I've been fortunate in the last any number of years. I've been fortunate in the last 15 months to be at Muirfield twice, and now
Mm.
historically, and I don't think the Muirfield members would argue with me that years ago they had a fairly tough reputation for the welcome that the various couple of secretaries many years ago gave. And I can't tell you how impressive. I mean, they have embraced the Tuesday, Thursday visitor concept. The process that they have in place it is an exceptional day out.
Wow.
And they're full, and they should be full. On the Tuesdays and Thursdays with all the play that they can handle. But it's outstanding. I mean, if you come from the United States and you go and you turn up and they've got a process to get you in and explain how everything works, and you play golf and you put your jacket and tie on and you go in for this wonderful lunch, and then you jacket and tie off, play foursomes, and it's a terrific. It's one of these magical days out that you hope everybody can experience because it's fun. For the game of golf, even the foursomes. People don't really understand how that's supposed to work.
Well, they probably know a little better now after the shellacking on foursomes last week at Bethpage, but you're right.
But so anyway, it's changed a lot, and there is a nuanced difference which makes a difference, but it is genuinely a win-win-win situation.
Yeah, and it's one of the great experiences of my life going there. Just as you said, we brought our jacket and tie, and we changed in afterwards and had lunch, and it was just fantastic. And of course, it's such a fantastic golf course. How's the golf traveler changed? I mean, do you see differences in the type of people, groups, that you're seeing from over the last 40 years?
Yeah, it's good. So the people used to go over and try to squeeze in more rounds of golf. Yeah, they're going for 10 days and they're going to play 14 or 15 rounds. We would see that 20, 25 years ago. And it might just be an aging of the demographic to some extent. But I think that there was an element at that time, years ago, number one, it was easier to do and easier to schedule because there was less demand on the golf courses, for one. But I think that, there was at that time, more people approached it from the standpoint that this might be their only trip. And they wanted to do it. And as travel has evolved, we can't forget that it was 1971 that was the first 747, and it was from that kind of mass tourism has taken off. And so the idea of going to London or Paris for the weekend for whatever it might be becomes to a certain crowd becomes quite normal. And the idea of making an annual trip to Scotland or Ireland to play golf is just part of the lifestyle. And so, but I think a number of years ago, people would view it as very much of a once in a lifetime type trip, so they'd squeeze more in. Yes, there's a slight aging of it. Many more people are much more comfortable over there, and not that they were uncomfortable before, but they didn't kind of understand how it all fitted together. You walk around St Andrews, and it's not all just the helicopter private jet squads that are folks that are coming in. There's a lot of young folks, less affluent, for want of a better description, that are at the Dunvegan or pubs and walking around, and they're playing Crail and they're playing Ely and they're playing the new course, and they're trying to go on the old course, and they're blah, blah, and they've rented an Airbnb, and they just love the atmosphere of the place.
Right.
More friends of mine are kind of trying to buy places over there and spend a few weeks in the summer over there because it's just a lovely. And whether it's North Berwick or St Andrews or Dornoch, there's so many factors that have kind of changed over the years. But I think it's just the knowledge of what it looks like over there. People are much more comfortable, and they're able to embrace the differences, I think, is the way, as opposed to years ago it was like, well, in America we do this, and they couldn't quite understand why it was that way over there.
Right. That makes sense. How far in advance do you people? I'm sure everyone wants to play St Andrews if they're going to Scotland. Like, how far in advance do you people, in your judgment, have to sort of book those trips if they want to get on the old course?
Really, I mean, today you really need to be looking at 27. So here we are in.
Wow, that far in advance.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, and it wasn't always that way. COVID had this, kind of concertina effect, and the demand when we came out of COVID was ridiculous. That softened up a little bit, but the simple reality is an old course. I mean, there's kind of 4 courses in the British Isles that are, in terms of demand and limitation of supply, that are kind of almost head and shoulders above the others. You've got Portrush and County Down in Ireland, and you've got Muirfield and the Old Course in Scotland. And the Old Course is, kind of head and shoulders above these 3 to some extent. But these four courses are kind of in a demand all to their own,
Yeah.
which is it is what it is.
And understandable. They're such amazing gems. What are sort of your popular types of trips now? And I mean, if you look back, I mean, are there, because I know you've gone way beyond just the UK, and I know you're involved with, pairing up golf travel with cruises. I mean, maybe talk about kind of what are the other locations people go? Are there any hidden, for someone who, yeah, I've been to Ireland, I've been to Scotland, they're great, I love it. Like, what are the hidden gems or the new gems that you kind of have come across for golf travel?
Well, as hard as we might try to sell, I'll use away from Scotland, if you will, because there's so much demand there, and Ireland to a marginally lesser extent. It's hard because these are for international golf. That's kind of the bellwether. But destinations that I think are just terrific. Some for golf and lifestyle. Would be like South Africa. I'm a huge fan of South Africa just because it's so unique. You've got some very good golf down at Fancourt and a few other places. And then, you've got the city experience in Cape Town. You've got the Stellenbosch for the wine, and then you go up, do the safari thing. And so as an experience is terrific. New Zealand similarly it's a beautiful country, lovely people, but there's some excellent golf courses down there from, what Julian Robertson started. Plus, you golf some courses there beforehand, and Tiara now, and so that's another destination that does very nicely. We do both land and the cruise program down there because of New Zealand's a pretty good country to get around by ship if you can.
Right.
We've seen some success recently with Vietnam. I think that just because there's some new facilities going in there. And, the adventurous, affluent golfer that just, I always remember, the number of people that would say, listen, I've got more money than time. And they just want to experience the world, to do it nicely, not worry about things, play golf in some really cool places. And but also be more than just golf. It's to kind of understand the country to some extent and see the country. So it's not, jumping on the cruise program. If it's a 12-night cruise, we'll try to have 5-6 rounds of golf. Maybe about 50% of the days will be golf. Something slightly more on the land tours, but so it's not as hardcore golf as AJGA is going to Scotland for 6 days and they're going to play 6 rounds of golf.
Right.
There's a little bit more of an opportunity to see the country that they're in. But yeah, I like South Africa, New Zealand. Vietnam's doing well, and so there's plenty of good golf left in the world.
Did you do much with the sandbelt courses in Australia too, or?
Yeah. I mean, I kind of overlooked that a little bit, but that's there's some great courses down there, and then down at Barnbougle,
Right.
there's some terrific golf down there. I would say that Australia it's that's actually another thing that's changed over the years. When we started offering New Zealand, people would think you could just roll them together. New Zealand, Australia was a trip, right? Not realizing it's a 3-hour flight or 2.5-hour flight.
They're not next door to each other.
Yeah.
They're a little far apart. Yeah.
Exactly. And so and each country deserves 2 weeks to see it. The New Zealand experience is so fundamentally different than the Australia experience. But yeah, we do a fair bit down to Australia, not as much as New Zealand. Courses in the Sandbelt are closer to some of the the private clubs in the UK, where they've got more restrictions. The other thing that's happened, jumping back to an earlier question, one of the big changes is the likes of a Kingsbarns, a Dumbarnie, where you've got genuinely premium daily fee golf courses, which didn't exist years ago. And that also serves a purpose. It accommodates demand on the weekends. With these golf courses, it allows people to play golf over the weekend when the otherwise might head for home. And so that helps hotels, and it just keeps the tourism on a more level pace over a 7-day cycle, as opposed to you get 5 days of golf and then there's nothing of any significance for a couple of days.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. What made you come up with the idea of partnering with the cruise line and stuff? I thought that was so interesting. I hadn't realized you guys did that. I mean, what made you think of doing that?
It was 1997, as I recall. It was the first one that we did with the Radisson Diamond, which was a twin-hulled vessel.
Yeah.
And then in 99, we started chartering the Clipper Adventure, which was an expedition, an old Russian expedition vessel that Clipper had out of St. Louis, 120 passengers, and we had a great run with that. Took it to the Open, and it was positioned around Europe. Um, and then that ship was sold, and around that time, Larry Pimentel, who was something of a cruise visionary, was president of Azamara, and it was owned by Royal Caribbean. And Larry had been a number of travel companies. He'd always wanted to try golf. He'd tried golf, and he realized that you needed to get somebody in that knew what they were doing. And they reached out to us, and the timing was one of these places, being the right place at the right time. They reached out to us, and I went down to Miami and saw Larry. And over the years, we've developed just a great relationship. I think we're up to 31 departures in 27.
Wow,
Um,
that's a lot.
we'll have 200 people on the Open cruise. We had 190, I think, at Port Rush this year. So it's really worked well, and it's as a part of our business, it really caters nicely to couples,
Yeah.
and where you either both play golf or one plays and one doesn't. And Azamara have a terrific shore excursion program. So if there's a 12-night cruise and the spouse plays golf 5 or 6 days, and the other spouse has got a chance of sightseeing for 5 or 6 days and doing city tours or whatever. And then they meet up afterwards, and it really has. It's remarkable how well it's worked. We're delighted.
That's awesome. Don't have to schlep your clubs around. Your clubs come just right. That's a nice. I like that aspect of
Yeah,
it.
and in everything we've done, that's a good kind of point. So we'll take the clubs from folks as soon as they arrive at the port,
Yeah.
and then the next time you'll see them will be on the first tee
Right.
or the driving range, and then the next time they come off the 18th green, the next time they see them at the next driving range. And so they're not carrying them up and down corridors and gangways and all
Right.
that stuff. And then we include food and beverage afterwards. It's just it works. I mean, it's remarkable how many it's just like-minded individuals, and if you give them the right environment, they have a lovely time. And it's nothing more complicated. It's not any secret sauce. It's just if you try to make things as easy as possible for somebody, a nice people that works.
Absolutely. Well, it's been a great success story. Let me touch on a couple of other aspects that I know you've been involved. You mentioned the AJGA. So that's of course the American Junior Golf Association. You were on the board there for a while. How did you get involved in that, and kind of what was that experience like for you?
So in the when I came over in '77 in the summer, I would have met Mike Bentley, who was at that stage he had started the DeKalb Junior Golf Association, and he had then started up the Atlanta, which then morphed into the American. And Mike had been a sports writer for the Atlanta newspaper, I believe.
Hmm.
Got to know him, and in the summer months, I would stay with Mike and his wife Jean Bentley in Atlanta and help them run tournaments. And at that stage, it was I think they did 11 tournaments a year. I mean, it was it was just getting started stuff. But I
Yeah.
would have played around the same time as Brandel, Chambly. I'm trying to think, Mark Brooks,
Yeah.
um, other guys of that era, Jerry Haas. And then when I too old to play in the tournaments, you'd be working there, and then I stayed involved, and then got onto the board in 1990 till 2000, and Stephen Hamblin, who's been the executive director for years. He
Hmm.
was hired as an assistant from the Copperhead course at Innisbrook in
Yeah,
Florida
sure. Right.
when I was around in 1982 or 83. And he's just done a fabulous job of turning that into a huge, very, very influential organization. And there's some things that, he was telling me, I saw him last year, and they've got something like 2,000 applicants for internships. I'm not talking
Wow.
about playing golf. And
Wow.
the number of people that have come through the AJGA intern program and are now running PGA Tour events and otherwise involved. So I mean, it's had a much wider impact than just on the best players. I mean, we see it. We see the impact that the best players. You know, it used to be many years ago. By the time somebody came out of college, they'd be 26, 27, 28 before they kind of find their feet on the tour. And right now, they come out of college is the next week. Right, the
Totally.
greatest.
Or sooner, or they win while they're in college, as we've had on the PGA Tour the last couple of years.
Exactly. So yeah, I'm very proud of my association with him, and Stephen's done a great job, and it was a wonderful for a kid from Scotland. That was a wonderful kind of quick learning um, experience for these 3 or 4 years as I was going through college.
That's great. And more recently, you were involved with the First Tee of Wilmington, right? For about 5, 6 years?
Yeah, so I'm still involved. First year Wilmington was they struggled. They closed down. I think it was like 2011 or so. You know, the first tee chapters can be tough can be tough going. They closed down. I was approached in 2014 or slash 15 about it at around the same time that the Wells Fargo tournament was going to be
Right.
coming to Eagle Point, where I'm a member, and I kind of, you know, golf had been so good to me. It was time to me to kind of do something meaningful. So we managed to get the city of Wilmington to kind of lease us for $1, as I recall, 7 acres that were adjacent to the municipal course, which is a Donald
Hmm.
Ross course, and we got John Fought in to design a 3-hole complex within that. You know, and it was built properly. We get pretty serious money in it, and we managed to get the first tee designated as the primary charity for the Wells Fargo tournament. We
Nice.
opened that we opened that venue the week of the first of the Wells Fargo, and you know what? And so I was chairman until January of 22, I think it was, and I'm still on the board. But we had the first tee event out at Pebble Beach last week or the week before, and there was a one young man that went out from here to represent. He qualified by virtue of the essays and whatever else they have to do. And it really kind of it made me feel so proud that that's kind of what we were trying to achieve. I mean, this was a young man from, I believe, Egypt that came over with his mother a good number of years ago, got bitten by the golf bug, because of the first tee. Every day he'd come out and practice when he could, and he had a chance to go out to Pebble Beach. That's kind of all the time and effort that you put into it. It kind of makes it worthwhile.
Absolutely. No, it's great that you've been involved in that. And I think I saw somewhere, are you a Golf Magazine top 100 panelist too?
Yeah, I've been involved with that for, gosh, time flies, probably just over somewhere between 20 and 25 years.
Wow.
So
Wow. That's a
just,
long time.
yeah, and I've been very fortunate over the years to, play any number of fine golf courses and travel and I try to fulfill my responsibilities to that where I can, and I weave it into my travel. There's so many new golf courses coming out,
Yeah, there are.
and you try to keep it all in perspective. It's fascinating. I mean, the panels are interesting. Hey, listen, they're great barroom conversation, and
Yeah.
if you take them too seriously, you're not doing yourself or anybody any favors. Lovely conversation, but how do you measure it? And this golf course as opposed to that one, the location, you go through 101 kind of criteria. But no, I've really enjoyed that responsibility over the years, and it's always fun to fill out the ballot when it comes around.
I bet. And I mean, I know, I think you belong to Marion, or I know you're connected with Marion. I mean, so you certainly know what a great golf course looks like with Marion, that's for sure.
Yeah, I've been fortunate to be a member up there for coming up. Geez, that's coming up in what, 22 years now. So
Wow.
yeah,
A lot of
it's a fact.
history there. I mean, I know the story. I mean, I had Scott and I on
Wow.
a while ago, and I will never forget. He's like, like the day or two before the podcast, he's sending me the, like these copies of letters to Hugh Wilson when he was designing and stuff. And I know they've got that room there. I mean, besides obviously an incredible golf course, the history, the Bobby Jones making the Grand Slam there. I've seen the pictures of the members going out in the tuxedos every year to the 11th green, right? I mean, the whole thing. It's what an experience, right?
It's of all the golf clubs I've been involved with, it's one that just absolutely embraces the history
Yeah.
and the traditions of the club in a way that's it's different, right? I mean, I remember there's another club that I belonged to that a few years ago they were trying to figure out who won the member guest, like 5 years earlier, right? And this is a very nice facility,
I'm sure.
but the lack of, like, it just struck me as being, there was so much living in the moment as opposed to if you couldn't remember nobody had recorded who'd won the member guest, which was a big deal. And whereas a Marion, I mean, just utterly embraces it. And there's a gentleman at the club that's so vested in it. And if you want to get a parking pass for the 19 whatever event, he'll pull it out the drawer. I mean, it's staggering, but they really do a nice job, and it's fun to take people there, particularly folks that enjoy golf history,
Yeah.
and let them kind of embrace the whole experience there.
Yep. And of course, they're an anchor site for the USGA. And I know we've got, I think it's what in 2030, was it the US Amateur they're having there? What, if it's a 100-year, or maybe it's the Open, I'm forgetting which one.
It's
They
the
have
open,
a,
yeah,
yeah, be 100th anniversary, of course, of Bobby Jones making the Grand Slam in 1930. And
yeah.
it's just great history
Yeah.
for sure. Hey, I'll get you out on this. One other thing I want to ask you about that I caught my eye. Old Tom Capital. What a great name for a fund that's involved in golf stuff. And you're on the advisory board. Tell us what that firm's about and kind of what your role is on that.
So I was introduced to these fellas, young guys, they're late 30s, really impressive about 18 months ago, and their investment, fundamentally it's investment guys in the golf business, and all the focus is in golf related activities. And we've and so my strategic help is there's some hospitality and some travel related uh, transactions that we've looked at, and I've given advice on that stuff. I've also involved in some of the general conversations about some other activities and opportunities that they're looking at. But in all the years, I mean, the golf industry is so nuanced, and to do and to say the right things, and to just have a long term vision as opposed to short term gains. That's what really impresses me about the guys at Old Tom. They're out there, they're doing some really interesting work. There was one that we just funded that was Blue Jeans Golf, which is it's some of the top guys from Top Golf that broke away, and they're buying up some. And when you think about it, mom and pop driving ranges, it's a very
Yeah,
inconsistent experience.
very. And yeah, I think that's ripe to be improved. Yeah.
Yeah, and so there's some of that. There's some back software, Whoosh, which is a software platform for private and semi-private clubs that's been quite successful in the US. There's a few other kind of deals that they're kicking around right now that some bigger than others, but it's fascinating. It's guys that will really do well. I've seen enough, and for me, it's a lot of fun because I'm able to use kind of 40 years of a Rolodex and try to connect
Oh,
with some people.
sure. Yeah.
I've already been able to do that to help them, and and create opportunities for friends and for them, and and the technology and golf. It's still got a long runway. I mean, there's some big opportunities there,
I
and fresh.
totally agree with you. Yeah. It's so interesting to me watching the golf scene. I mean, in different areas, you think like something like equipment, you've got the big guys, you've got Titleist, you've got Callaway, TaylorMade. And yet you have something like lab golf putters come around, and whatever you think of the science of the zero torque putters, I mean, they go from nothing to now like being so hot and everything, and it's just, it's quite an interesting industry.
It's funny that the lab putters, the number of guys I've come across in the last 90 days, good golfers that I've played with, just absolutely swear by them.
Yeah,
I mean, it's right. I mean, so there has to be something there. At the very least, they've convinced people to believe in it,
for
right?
sure. That
And
totally.
and and so listen, I think one of the joys for me is that if you can just be around smart people, it's a whole lot more fun. Nice, smart people that love the game of golf. I mean, it's not that complicated, and you don't want to be out swimming with the sharks all day long.
No, 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 I totally agree. And it's one of the many great aspects of the game. Gordon, thank you so much. This has been great, and appreciate you spending some time with us today. And again, congratulations. Perry Golf still going strong 40 years later. And really appreciate it and continued success to you. Appreciate you coming on.
Thank you. It's been my pleasure. Thanks,
Thank
Larry.
you.
Take
Yeah.